Day to all. Uh, in the last video, we discussed about the basics of employee attitude, engagement, and organizational commitment. Uh, as a part of HR analytics course. The videos I post here are both meant for the classes I handle for my students, as well as I wanted the same to be shared online so that a larger target audience might get benefited out of it. Fine. So I'd be using certain terms which are meant to my students, like semester, course we have been undergoing, and all those things. Fine. See, in the last video, we had taken up how to look at attitudes, employees' behavior, employees' organizational commitment, and their level of engagement from a HR analyst point of view. And this is where we stopped in the last video, having discussed about the basics of commitment, engagement, and attitudes, and what are the outcomes that greater levels of commitment and greater levels of engagement and positive attitudes will result to an organization. As I have already told in my video earlier, these discussions are in the perspective of HR analytics. So we need to view these qualitative aspects from a HR analyst point of view, and try to estimate the financial outcomes of it, and express in more quantifiable terms. Now, from in that perspective, we would now start our discussions and continue. And to start with, we will look upon the financial outcomes of higher levels of employee commitment, greater the level of engagement, and positive their attitudes are. Okay. So here are the financial outcomes of the employee attitudes, behaviors, and here are the financial outcomes that engaged and employees with commitment bring to your organizations. Fine. So the points as such you look like are self-explanatory. Engaged employees will take leave lower, so it will result in reduced absenteeism, turnover, separations. And when an organization is positive, normally it will be referred to with the other employees, so it can attract talent pool, and it can serve the customers better when you have a high level of engaged employees and people who are committed. All those things are explanatory. May I take few minutes in explaining how these will result in financial outcome, because as a HR analyst, that is what our major concern is. Like in the earlier videos, I have explained you how to measure the various cost of absenteeism, how various cost of absenteeisms are overlooked. See, whenever we take the cost of absenteeism, we take like the part of like the employee is supposed to be present on a particular day, he is absent. So what is that wage or the salary we are paying him for that paid leave, and that alone is estimated as the cost of absenteeism. But now we have looked at from a HR analyst perspective that there are more than 14 elements, and most of them which are overlooked when we are estimating the cost of absenteeism. Like the ones like if the employee is not present at that particular job, how it affects the co-workers, and because of that how quality defects are incurred. Then how it affects the supervisors, how supervisors are supposed to spend extra time, because instead of 10 to 15 members, he is supposed to manage with 13 or 12 members because few members are absent, and how that is going to result in cost. Suppose we are engaging some fresh recruits in place of experienced employees who are absent, how it is going to reflect in the quality of the output that the fresh recruits are bringing, because fresh recruits will not be able to work like your skilled employees who are already trained. So the cost of training required to um, required to give to the fresh recruits to work at the level of the experienced employees, the cost of supervisory time spent in training these fresh recruits. So all these costs are to be estimated, and the cost of quality defects you are going to have because the co-workers morale and the supervisor is spending extra time. So these are all the costs we are supposed to estimate when we actually estimate the cost of absenteeism from HR analyst point of view. And this we have discussed, it is already evident from our discussion that this will result in a huge cost to an organization. So when an organization has got highly committed employees, highly engaged employees, then they will not absent themselves from their work, and it will lead to reduced absenteeism, which is a great cost saving for the organization. And that is how this employee attitude and behavior is related to financial outcomes of an organization. Now, number two, reduced turnover. We have already seen that when you want to replace an existing employee who is experienced, to replace his particular opening, you will have to spend 1.5 times of his salary. In this cost will take into consideration the new team formed for recruiting a new employee, sourcing that employee, the cost you spend in advertising for that opening, the cost you spend in shortlisting, the cost spent in administrative work for arranging for interviews and all those things, the travel cost for bringing the interview panel. So everything we have seen actually. Okay, I'll post you videos on this which I have shared with my students, and I will post these videos on how to compute the cost of absenteeisms, turnover, and separations, which were our earlier discussions. I'll post those videos so that you will better able to understand. Okay, so these are the some of the cost we have discussed with in terms of turnover. So when the employees are having a positive attitude, they have organizational commitment, and especially the continuous commitment, which we have seen, which states that the employees feel a sense of cost to be incurred if they switch their job, then they are not going to switch. So that results in reduced turnover, which is again a financial outcome for the organization, a financial benefit for the organization. Number three is reduced separations, and we have seen that whether it is involuntary separation where we are sending out an employee, or a voluntary separation where the employee and his own switches decides to move from the job, whatever it is, it leads to certain costs to be incurred from the organization in terms of settlement, in terms of finding a new employee for that vacant place. All those things are required. So highly engaged employees and highly committed employees will not leave the organizations that easily, and that will bring about reduced separations, which is again a cost saving for the organization. Then when your workforce is full of enthusiasm, engagement, and when your workforce has a positive attitude towards your organization and they have got a commitment, then the word of mouth would spread and you would be easily able to attract talent pools. There are a lot of rankings which rate the workplaces as best places to work for and all those things. Imagine your organization finds a place in those things. It is easy for you to convince your key management roles or key positions to be filled up with beautiful talent employees. Okay, so it will help you in attract talent pool, which is again a financial outcome, and it is again a beneficial fallout for an organization because of high levels of commitment and high levels of employee engagement. Then we have already seen like employees with high levels of organizational commitment and engagement will serve the customers with a certain kind of enthusiasm, with certain additional efforts, with a positive mindset and all those things, which would lead to the customers perceiving a positive sense of emotion when they come visit your organization, which will draw the customers back to visit your organization, and that will lead to customer loyalty. So when your customers are loyal, definitely it is going to be a financial outcome for the organization, because we have already seen, and it is an universal fact known to all of us, that it is 6 times costlier to bring in a new customer than to retain an existing customer. Then, when coming to your pivotal roles, that most important roles, when the employees are leaving, we have already seen a term called pivotal talent pools, which are key important roles in your organization. If those people leave often, then your organizational performance is going to be at a dip. So when your employees are encouraged, when your employees are having commitment, and when they are highly engaged, these people are likely not to leave your organization. So your pivotal talent pools are retained, and that will again give you a financial outcome which is better for the organization. So these are all the various financial outcomes I have listed. Now, how this employee engagement will lead to a competitive advantage? We know competitive advantage is not something which cannot be easily copied by the competing organizations. Look at this. This is how it is related. We have already seen in the earlier slide about the benefits of employee engagement and commitment. Some of the benefits we get out of this higher levels of employee engagement is that the job would be challenging and they will be eager to learn. There will be autonomy. There will be supervisor task support. There will be a climate of respect and trust. There will be a work-life fit and economic security. These are all the benefits we have discussed. This in turn will lead to high level of job engagement, high job satisfaction, and more it is likely that people will stay, and it will lead to high intention to stay. If these people have high level of engagement, satisfaction, and they are intended to stay, and that will lead to a highly engaged employees at the work unit level. Okay. When these employees who are highly engaged at the work unit level cooperate with each other, devote with extra effort, come out with certain innovations, and they are effectively able to adapt to change, then when it all combined across the work unit levels, then it will lead to higher customer satisfaction at the organizational level, higher profitability at the organizational level, and increased share stakeholder value at the organizational level. This is how higher employee engagement will lead to competitive advantage and financial outcome. Now next, higher employee engagement, as we have already seen, will result in a positive service climate. What is this positive service climate? Employees feel happy to serve customers, and so customers feel happy to visit your organization and being served by your employees. So this is what we call it as a positive service climate. Okay, so this employee engagement we have seen in the earlier part of the video is determined by the vigor, the extra effort they are able to put, the energy levels they show, the dedication, how far they are dedicated, and how far they are immersed in the job, which is the job absorption. Okay, when this multiplied with, in the sense that supported with training, appropriate training given to these employees, appropriate supervisory support, and appropriate performance rewards and feedback given to the employees, will lead to a positive service climate where the customers who are visiting your organizations are served better by these employees, and the employees will also feel a sense of happiness in serving the customers. So this positive service climate will lead to improved employee performance, that in turn will lead to customer loyalty, and it will lead to financial outcomes of the organization. Fine. So this is how employee engagement and service climate will also result in financial outcomes. So in the second part of this video, we are just looking at how this positive attitudes, behaviors by employees, engagement levels by employees, and commitment by employees are resulting in financial outcomes for the organization. Now, coming to the most important part of it, as I have told you, though these are qualitative measures, you will have to look it from an HR analyst perspective where you would try to measure and quantify. So, when it comes to measures of employee attitudes, you can take two measures to satisfy the level of job satisfaction. We have discussed earlier in this part of video, I have told you job satisfaction is a multi-dimensional thing. It depends on job security, it depends on how well the job pays, it depends on the perceived benefit that the employee is receiving, it depends on certain level of recognition he or she is given. So it is multi-dimensional. It depends on lot of factors. So when it comes to measurement of job satisfaction, you can go for a multifaceted measurement, which is nothing but, see, there are multiple factors which determine job satisfaction. You take factor by factor and then try to measure with the employees what is their satisfaction level with regard to that particular factor alone. Say, for example, the amount of salary, wage, and the benefits a particular employee is receiving is one of the determinant of job satisfaction. So I just wanted to know only a feedback on only on this factor, whether the employees are paid well or not. I'm paying them. Are they perceiving in that I'm paying well or not? So I take only this factor. I ignore the other factors like job security, employment security, the sense of their happiness in their job. So I ignore others. Though they are all part of job satisfaction, I ignore those factors because I'm concerned only on one particular factor. So I take only that factor and try to measure. This is what we call it as multifaceted measurement. Otherwise, I don't want feedback to be collected from the employees on each and every factor. I want a wholesome view of whether they are satisfied with the job or not. Then I will go for a summed up measurement where I will generally ask them whether you are satisfied with the job, which means that if I am satisfied with the job, then it can be inferred that I am satisfied with the pay, I'm happy at my job, the job is good for me, the job provides learning opportunity. So in that perspective, I can measure. So these are the two methods in which you can measure the level of job satisfaction. When it comes to organizational commitment, you can measure the affective commitment. Affective commitment is nothing but the kind of emotional bonding that particular employee develops and has with the organization. Number one. Number two is continuance commitment, which is nothing but how far the will stay, or how far he perceives if I switch to other job that it will be costly for me, so I tend to continue with this particular job. The normative commitment is again a similar kind of thing, like how far the job is going to retain me within the organization itself, how far I find my job, how far I am committed to, how far I have developed a liking towards my job, and because of that I am going to stay with my job. So these are certain measures you can take, and these are certain methods you can use to measure the job satisfaction as well as organizational commitment. Now, when it comes to doing this analysis, there are three important factors which you will have to keep in mind. Number one is time lags, levels of analysis, and causal ordering. Okay, I'll tell you what is this. Time lag is nothing but the frequency in which you are going to conduct this studies, whether you are going to measure engagement level, organizational commitment level, or attitudes. What is the frequency? See, there are two schools of thought with regard to time lags, and one is like very frequently measuring, and the other is like a longitudinal measure where you will give a long gap between one particular occurrence of measurement and the second occurrence of measurement. But what's the appropriate time interval in which these studies on attitudes and engagement levels should be conducted? There is no established fact. But one thing we can sure upon is that this time lag should be decided based on the industry type and the kind of sector you are operating in. See, there are certain industries where the attrition rate is high as per the norms itself. Take for example IT and other sectors, this digital marketing thing and all those things. There will be lot of job attrition rates and the turnover rates will be high across the industry. So in such cases, it is better to conduct a more frequent study, keeping the time lag closer or smaller. Okay, where there is a tendency for the employees to stay long for a particular period of time in a particular organization, and the sector industry benchmarks says that the turnover rates, attrition rates are low across the industry, then there is more scope that you can go for longitudinal studies, because employee after joining in used to stay at least for years in your organization, so you can conduct it every 2 years or every 3 years, or whatever it is you can decide. So number one is the time lag, and there is no hard past and rule for deciding the time lag. Again, I told you, it depends on how many times you want, or how often you want the results. And number two is yet the type of industry and the type of sector in which your organization is operating, depending on the attrition level across the industry and the turnover rates. So this is with regard to time lags. Okay. So what is the why this is given more importance is that because sometimes frequent studies will what you call it may work out in a different form, that it will annoy the employees and the results may not be sometimes significant. What about longitudinal studies? See, as I already told you, employee attitudes tend to change over a period of time. So a study conducted 5 years back will no more be valid, and the results will not be consistent when you conduct the same study after 5 years. Because now that the attitudes and priorities of the employees have changed, the definition for job engagement itself has changed. Okay, so this is with regard to time lag, and that's why it has to be given more importance, and it should be considered as an important factor when you do this measurement of attitudes. Number two, level of analysis is like whether you are going to do it at the individual level, department level, and factory level, business unit level, or to the overall organizational level. See, in huge organizations, it's very difficult to measure at the individual level. So this depends on the size of organization. If you have one single factory, one particular organizational unit, and that is your prime business unit, then you can go for measuring at the individual level. If your employee workforce is huge, then you can go for conducting study at the individual level or at the unit level, department level. Then you can have a consolidated result at your overall organizational level. Why this level of analysis matters is that when you conduct at the individual level and you accumulate and cumulate the same results at an organizational level, the results tend to vary. Then causal ordering. What determines what? Let us take for example, does positive attitude bring in productivity of the organization or increased performance of the organization, or employees working in organizations which are doing well are positive in their work? There can be both ways. Okay, so the organization which I am a part of is a very good organization, showing results year on year, and it is growing. The culture is good, and because of that, I have tended to develop an positive attitude towards my job, and I express a high level of commitment, and I am deeply engaged in my job because I'm a part of a good organization. Or does engaged employees, does employees with positive attitude and employees with commitment make up good organizations which are financially growing? So what is the factor, preceding factor and the sustaining factor? What is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable? You will have to decide, and you will have to be very careful in deciding that. Okay, fine. And that is for it. And for your recap, I'm just repeating that we have discussed attitudes, behavior, and commitment, and the level of employee engagement. and how this will impact an organization and what are the financial outcomes. And as a HR analyst, when we try to measure what are the important factors we need to consider when we measure on that. And this presentation of mine, as I told you earlier in the part one, is adapted from a book on investing in people by Casico and John. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Okay, I'll post more videos on the other topics also. If any suggestions and feedback, kindly comment. Okay, thank you so much.